flight attendant slaps black woman unaware. SHES, the billionaire that owns the plane, imagine stepping onto a luxurious private jet, expecting only a smooth, tranquil flight, only to witness a shocking altercation that no one saw coming. A high-flying passenger, quietly confident in her own skin, is singled out by a flight attendant who grossly underestimates her. One moment, a simple request for a glass of water leads to a sneering refusal. The next, a stinging slap across the passenger's face. Little does the flight attendant know, she just assaulted the very woman who owns not only the plane, but also a global empire. What follows is a breathtaking clash of arrogance and power that will leave everyone reeling. Marina Caldwell was no stranger to airplanes. As the founder and CEO of Caldwell Tech Solutions, a cutting-edge software enterprise that had, over the past decade, expanded globally, she was used to traveling in first-class cabins, meeting with heads of state, and negotiating million-dollar deals. Yet on this particular morning, there was an electric air of excitement she couldn't quite place. Perhaps it was because she had something more personal at stake. The flight in question was a private charter from New York's Teterboro Airport to Cape Town, South Africa. Marina owned a Boeing business jet, an opulent reconfiguration of a commercial 737 aircraft, outfitted with plush leather seats, a conference area, and even a bedroom suite for long-haul comfort. But for this trip, she'd allowed an old friend to coordinate a small corporate retreat on board, inviting key stakeholders and philanthropic partners to strategize on a new African outreach program. Among the invitees were board members, philanthropic leaders, and a few up-and-coming entrepreneurs, people who might not have realized just how often extraordinary experiences could open extraordinary doors. As she entered the bright and stylish cabin, she noticed a new member of the flight crew standing near the galley. This young woman wore an impeccable uniform, but there was a tense set to her jaw. Marina only caught her name briefly, Camilla. Something about the flight attendant's expression, tight-lipped, uncertain, caused Marina to pause. But pressed for time, she simply offered a polite smile, introducing herself with a friendly handshake. The younger woman nodded curtly, failing to return the warmth. Marina wrote it off as nerves, or perhaps a bad day. The flight crew was usually a tight, professional group that had served her for years. Everyone had off days, so she made a mental note to give Camilla a friendly reassurance when she had a moment. After all, if this big corporate planning session was a success, it would lead to a major philanthropic expansion in the African market, something that had the potential to impact hundreds, if not thousands, of lives. Little did Marina know, Camilla had her own set of unacknowledged prejudices and personal frustrations that were about to explode into a dramatic confrontation. Camilla Lansing had only been on the job for a few months, hired by a private charter staffing agency that prided itself on excellence at 40,000 feet. She had aspirations of eventually joining the cabin crew for a major commercial airline, then making the leap to a managerial role. In her mind, this gig serving private flights was a stepping stone to bigger opportunities. But stepping onto the Caldwell Tech Solutions private plane that day, Camilla was already irate. She'd had an argument with her roommate about unpaid bills that morning. She was frustrated that her boss had assigned her this flight an overnight journey to Cape Town when she'd repeatedly requested local or shorter hops so she could manage her personal affairs back home. And she felt overshadowed by the more experienced flight attendants, who seemed to have better rapport with the guests. When she noticed Marina, a poised black woman dressed in understated elegance, sharp white blazer, tailored pants, her braided hair pinned in a neat bun, Camilla's eyes flickered with an odd mixture of resentment and presumptive bias. She saw in Marina someone who didn't look like the typical billionaire or VIP she was used to. In her ignorance, Camilla told herself that this must be a less significant guest, maybe an assistant. The flight had multiple passengers, some of whom were well known in philanthropic circles. Camilla's mind was primed to latch onto superficial status markers. Marina was polite, even gracious. But Camilla's default was suspicious annoyance. She believed that people who asked too many questions about the flight or the safety protocols were only trying to show off or prove they were important. And though Marina made only a few inquiries, politely double-checking the arrangements for some VIP guests, Camilla's prejudgment ballooned. She categorized Marina as a demanding passenger before the plane even took off. It didn't help that Camilla overheard the other flight attendants speaking with quiet admiration about Marina, how she was a self-made tech mogul, how she was known for her calm leadership and her philanthropic work. Jealousy gnawed at Camilla, who felt overshadowed by such success. Then came the moment that planted the seeds for everything to spiral, a simple request for water. Marina, finding herself parched after welcoming guests aboard, politely asked Camilla if she could have a glass of sparkling water with a slice of lemon. Rather than responding with the standard courtesy, Camilla scoffed an almost inaudible exhalation of annoyance, then snapped, "You can wait until the service begins, ma'am." The tone was clipped, borderline rude. Surprised, Marina pressed her lips together. She noted the shift in vibe, but tried to brush it off. People had bad days. She mustered a cordial, "No worries, whenever you have a moment." However, the tension was now established, a small crack in the facade of professionalism that would soon widen into a chasm. The plane taxied down the runway under a clear morning sky. From her plush seat by the window, Marina took a moment to reflect on her journey. She had grown up in modest circumstances in Atlanta, Georgia. Her father was a school principal, and her mother a civil rights attorney who emphasized the importance of perseverance. At age 19, Marina had started coding websites from her dorm room at MIT, building a small tech empire that focused on inclusive and accessible technology solutions for communities around the world. By the time she was 30, she was a millionaire. By 35, she was a billionaire, albeit a discreet one, investing heavily in philanthropic causes under the radar. This trip for her was more than business. It was about returning to a place Africa she'd visited many times to support local entrepreneurs, educational programs, and healthcare initiatives. She had big plans to develop an incubator program in Cape Town that would empower young tech leaders from disadvantaged backgrounds. Symbolically, this flight represented not just a physical crossing of oceans, but a bridging of worlds. She wanted everyone aboard, from the philanthropic sponsors to her own staff, to feel part of a shared mission. Yet, from the corner of her eye, she kept noticing Camilla glancing her way, an odd expression on her face. Sometimes it was contempt, other times confusion. Marina wished she could dismiss it, but a knot formed in her stomach. Why was this flight attendant so antagonistic? Was it pure ignorance, or something deeper? When the seatbelt sign turned off and people started mingling, the other flight attendants began offering beverages and warm towels. Camilla, however, busied herself in the galley, pointedly ignoring Marina's area. A different attendant, Gisele, finally brought Marina a glass of sparkling water with lemon. Marina thanked her, determined not to let the microaggressions disrupt her focus. An hour into the flight, the aircraft reached cruising altitude. Some of the corporate guests settled into a conference space to discuss strategic goals. Marina joined them, presenting a slide deck about the potential expansions in Cape Town, referencing real-life success stories from partnerships with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. She highlighted how technology could revolutionize rural communities, from telemedicine to e-learning. The energy in the room was electric, and even the older board members found themselves inspired by her vision. And still, from behind the partition, Camilla was stewing. She'd overheard how people spoke about Marina's achievements, how she was revered not just as a wealthy individual, but as a visionary with a heart for social impact. Camilla felt smaller and smaller, overshadowed by someone she'd prematurely judged as unworthy of respect. In her mind, she started to formulate a narrative that this high-maintenance passenger was showing off, making her look bad, or commanding attention that Camilla thought should rightly belong to others more deserving. It was nonsensical, even bizarre, but envy often warps logic. As the flight progressed, tensions rose in subtle ways. Giselle noticed Camilla's unusual hostility and tried to quell it by offering to handle all of Marina's requests. But Camilla refused to concede any territory, claiming that she was quite capable of serving the passenger roster herself. When Giselle gently reminded her that Marina was, in fact, the owner of the plane, Camilla blinked in disbelief. She let out a short laugh. "You can't be serious," she said. "There's no way." Giselle, sensing Camilla's prejudice and wanting to correct her, insisted firmly, "Marina Caldwell is the CEO of Caldwell Tech Solutions. She's been recognized by Forbes, Time, you name it. She's literally why we're here in the first place." Camilla's jaw tightened. "Well, I guess money can't buy class," she muttered under her breath. But now her misplaced anger had a new layer: denial. She simply couldn't reconcile her preconceived notion built from stereotypes about who qualifies as a billionaire with the reality of the accomplished woman in front of her. Meanwhile, Marina was blissfully unaware of that exchange. She spent the next few hours mingling, ensuring her fellow travelers were comfortable, and drafting proposals on her laptop. She thought about her mother's voice, echoing in her head: "Led by example, show integrity in all you do." The older woman had passed away a few years ago, leaving Marina with a legacy of grace and resilience. She carried that with her, determined to treat people with respect, even when they didn't always reciprocate. But some storms can't be quelled by grace alone. Around dinner time, the plane's chef, a gourmet cook skilled at preparing in flight delicacies, served a multi-course meal to the conference group. Camilla was tasked with helping plate the dishes. She nearly dropped a plate when Giselle suggested that they make sure Marina's table setting was perfect. "After all, she's hosting this entire flight," Giselle said. Camilla slammed a drawer shut, muttering about the special treatment. An hour later, as she served the main course, she deliberately placed Marina's plate on the table with an audible thud. Marina flinched but remained polite. "Thank you very much." Conversation around the table continued, but the tension was palpable. Some of the guests shot concerned glances at Camilla's cold demeanor. Marina tried to lighten the mood, talking about her first visit to Cape Town and how she'd visited Robben Island, the prison where Nelson Mandela had been held, a poignant reminder that prejudice could be overcome. She had tears in her eyes recalling the experience. Little did she know, prejudice was building only a few feet away, about to erupt in a chilling display of disrespect. Somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, halfway through the flight, the cabin lights were dimmed and passengers began to settle in for some rest. The conversation and excitement subsided into a soft lull. Marina took the opportunity to stretch her legs and walk quietly around the cabin, checking on her guests like a gracious host. She noticed Camilla was near the back, seemingly doing inventory checks in a small storage closet, feeling that it was best to address any hostility head-on, but politely, Marina approached her. She offered a small smile and said, "I wanted to see if you needed anything, or if there's anything we can do to make your job easier. I know these long flights can be tough." Camilla whipped around, her eyebrows knitting in suspicion. "What's that supposed to mean?" she shot back. Marina blinked, momentarily stunned by the defensiveness. I just meant we're grateful for your hard work, and I don't need your pity, Camilla interrupted. Her voice was low, resentful. It's my job to serve drinks and meals. I don't need you checking up on me. Marina took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. She recognized the tension but hoped to diffuse it. I'm not checking up on you. I just wanted to thank you and see if everything's all right. If I came across as condescending, I apologize. That was never my intention. For a moment, Camilla's face flickered with conflicting emotions: embarrassment, anger, confusion. Then she hissed, "You think because you have money, you can walk around acting like you own the place?" Marina paused, her tone still calm. "Camilla, I do own this plane," she said softly. "And I've been very appreciative of everyone's work. If there's a misunderstanding..." But Camilla wasn't listening. She practically slammed the closet door and marched away, leaving Marina standing there, baffled and slightly shaken. Marina's mind spun. Is she dealing with personal struggles? Does she harbor some bias about me? She decided to talk to the lead flight attendant later to sort this out discreetly. After all, a situation like this could escalate, and she had no intention of letting negativity mar a journey that was supposed to unite people in a philanthropic mission. Time inched forward. Most passengers found themselves drifting off to sleep, lulled by the quiet hum of the engines. The plane's interior lights were now in a low, cozy setting. Outside, the stars over the Atlantic glittered like diamonds in the night sky. Marina settled into a recliner, reviewing documents on her tablet. She felt uneasy about the confrontation with Camilla. As an executive, she was used to handling conflict calmly, but something about Camilla's hostility was distinctly personal. Marina tried to push it out of her mind, focusing instead on the upcoming philanthropic plans. This was her mission: forging alliances, raising funds, and supporting grassroots innovation. The potential was massive. A while later, she realized she was thirsty. She tried to catch the attention of a flight attendant passing by, but they were occupied. Deciding to help herself, Marina rose and walked toward the galley, where a small fridge containing bottled water was located. The memory of Camilla's coldness hung in her mind, but she tried to remain cordial. As she opened the fridge to grab a bottle of water, Camilla emerged from behind the curtain, separating the galley from a staff area. Her eyes immediately locked on Marina. "You're not supposed to be in here," she snapped. Marina, taken aback, stammered, "I'm sorry, I was just grabbing a bottle of water. I didn't want to bother anyone." Camilla rolled her eyes, stepping forward. Her voice rose, cutting through the otherwise quiet cabin. "Oh, so now we're too good to ask for help. You can't just barge into the galley as if it's your personal kitchen." Confusion flashed across Marina's face. "It is my plane," she said in a measured tone, trying not to sound patronizing. "But I didn't mean any disrespect. I'm just trying to be considerate." Camilla let out a harsh laugh. "Considerate? Sure. Next time, just sit down and do what you're told, like everyone else." The hostility, so unprovoked, stung Marina. She closed the fridge and turned to face Camilla, speaking quietly so as not to disturb the other passengers. "Camilla, this is getting out of hand. Let's step aside and talk calmly. Is something bothering you?" "Step aside," Camilla repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You step aside. You people always think you can come in and do whatever you want." Acting all high and mighty, Marina's stomach twisted. She recognized the insinuation. Her voice shook slightly as she asked, "What do you mean by you people?" Camilla snorted, crossing her arms. "Don't pretend you don't know. Money doesn't change where you come from." That was when Giselle and a couple of the other passengers, roused by the raised voices, poked their heads into the galley. Giselle's eyes widened in alarm. She motioned for Camilla to lower her voice, but Camilla brushed her off, fueled by something more potent than reason. She was a storm in search of a place to land. Marina, still striving for peace, whispered, "Look, I don't want a scene. Let's just talk privately," or Camilla cut her off, throwing her arms up. "A scene? You're the one making a scene, rummaging in here like you own everything." "But I do own it," Marina said softly, glancing at the faces now peeking in. Her voice trembled with an urgency to contain the situation. "Camilla, please." And that was when it happened. Camilla, boiling with misdirected rage, took a step forward and swung her open palm in a swift, forceful motion across Marina's cheek. The crack reverberated in the cramped galley, echoing with stunning clarity. Marina stumbled backward, her hand flying to her face. The room fell into an instant hush of sheer disbelief. Gisele gasped audibly. One of the philanthropic partners shouted, "Oh my God!" Another flight attendant rushed over, her eyes wide with shock. Passengers who had been sleeping sat up, startled by the commotion. For a split second, no one moved. It was as if the entire plane froze in time, the hum of the engines the only sound. Marina's cheeks stung. But more than the physical pain was the emotional shock that a flight attendant, a staff member on her own plane, had just slapped her. Through her swirling confusion and adrenaline, she heard Camilla breathing heavily. The younger woman's eyes flickered with regret, then immediately hardened again, as if doubling down on her misplaced anger. Marina pressed her lips together, tears of both pain and astonishment gathering in the corners of her eyes. Her voice shook when she finally spoke. "Camilla, what have you done?" Pandemonium erupted. Gisele rushed forward, placing herself between Marina and Camilla. Passengers flooded the narrow passage, their voices a chaotic mixture of concern, disbelief, and indignation. Someone hurried to find the lead flight attendant. Someone else called out for the pilot. The philanthropic partners huddled around Marina, checking if she was injured. Her cheek was already reddening into an angry welt. Camilla still stood, her palm tingling from the blow she'd delivered, as if even her body was in shock at her own actions. It was a surreal moment, the world tilting on its axis. She locked eyes with Marina. There was a flicker of horror, as if part of her realized she'd done something unforgivable. But pride and prejudice still battled in her chest, compelling her to stand her ground, even as the flight's social order crumbled around her. Marina gathered herself, tears unshed, focusing on her breathing. She had faced countless boardrooms full of skeptical men, braved challenging negotiations, and lived through personal family losses. But never in her life had she been physically assaulted like this, especially in such a humiliating and public manner. It was almost inconceivable. The lead flight attendant, a middle-aged man named Robert, burst onto the scene. He assessed the chaos, zeroing in on the red mark on Marina's face. Turning to Camilla, he demanded, "What on earth is going on here?" Camilla's voice trembled with poorly disguised panic. She got in my space. I was just defending myself. That is not what happened." Gisele shot back, her voice cracking with outrage. "You slapped her, unprovoked. She only asked for some water." Robert's face paled. He looked from Marina's distraught expression to Camilla's trembling stance and made a swift decision. "Camilla, consider yourself relieved of duty immediately. Go to the staff quarters and remain there until we land. We'll handle this when we're on the ground." Camilla blinked, as if still in disbelief that the situation was real. "But, Robert, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Robert cut in, his tone brooking no argument. "You struck a passenger, the plane's owner, no less, and that is unacceptable. Now go." A hush fell again. Camilla turned on her heel and stormed away, not even bothering to look at Marina. Once she was gone, a flurry of motion engulfed Marina. Passengers and flight attendants tried to comfort her, offering apologies and water, but all she could do was stand there, her mind spinning. Part of her wanted to break down in tears. Another part of her wanted to maintain composure for the sake of everyone else. The pilot, alerted to the situation, called Robert for a briefing. Marina overheard talk about the possibility of diverting the flight to the nearest airport for safety and legal reasons. But she intervened. "No," she said, her voice quiet yet firm. "I don't want to jeopardize the mission for the rest of the passengers. Let's just get to Cape Town as planned. We'll deal with the consequences there." Word spread throughout the cabin like wildfire. The flight attendant had slapped the billionaire who owned the plane. Emotions soared: outrage, sympathy, disbelief. Some were appalled that Camilla could harbor such an attitude toward a woman who had been nothing but polite. Others whispered that perhaps this was a stark reminder of how prejudice can rear its ugly head in unexpected places. Marina retreated to a private lounge area in the aft of the plane, accompanied by Giselle and a couple of her philanthropic partners. They tried to comfort her, offering cold compresses for her cheek. One of the older board members took her hand and said, "I cannot begin to express how sorry I am that this happened on your own aircraft. You must be devastated." Marina managed a wan smile. "I am. But I'm more concerned about why it happened. How could someone hate or resent me so much that they'd lash out like that? I barely know her." Gazelle pressed her lips together, swallowing tears. "Some people carry biases that run deep, Miss Caldwell. Others lash out because of their own frustrations. It's not your fault." At that, Marina exhaled heavily. "I know, but it's still shocking. I never thought I'd face something like this on my own plane. My mother always warned me that prejudice can appear anywhere, but I guess I thought I'd insulated myself with good people. I'm sorry you all had to witness that." Another passenger, a philanthropist named Dr. Naomi Reyes, leaned in. "Marina, this might sound strange, but maybe this is a call for compassion too. That flight attendant is clearly in a dark place. We're all outraged on your behalf, but I also sense she's struggling with something bigger than just you." Marina considered that. Despite her throbbing cheek, she felt an inkling of compassion. Her philanthropic work had taught her that hurt people often hurt others. Still, it didn't excuse the assault. A wave of exhaustion overtook her. "Right now, I just need some rest. Let's finalize any immediate tasks for the rest of the flight, then handle the legalities once we land." She sank into a plush chair, pressing the cold compress against her face. The cabin lights seemed harsher now, the space smaller. Outside, the endless night sky provided an ironic contrast, so peaceful and expansive, while inside, tension lingered in every breath. The night sky over the Atlantic was a tapestry of shimmering stars, their brilliance matched only by the sleek cabin lights gently illuminating the opulent interior of Marina's Boeing business jet. Outside, the moonlit clouds formed a silvery path below, while inside, the atmosphere had eased into a hushed lull. Most of the passengers, weary from the day's excitement and prolonged discussions, had settled into their reclining seats or private suites for a few hours of rest. A soft sense of tranquility enveloped the cabin, but Marina found herself unable to surrender to sleep. Seated near a window, she scrolled through digital documents on her tablet, each page outlining philanthropic strategies for their upcoming venture in Cape Town. Yet her concentration faltered. Every time she tried to immerse herself in planning, her mind drifted to the earlier tension with Camilla. As the founder and CEO of Caldwell Tech Solutions, Marina was no stranger to navigating heated negotiations or diffusing difficult confrontations, but something in Camilla's attitude seemed far more personal than standard workplace stress. Marina's background had taught her to read micro-expressions and subtle cues. She remembered the look in Camilla's eyes, a simmering resentment, perhaps underpinned by unchecked bias. It was jarring. On top of that, the flight thus far had been peppered with small unkindnesses, unnecessarily sharp remarks, cold stares, blatant avoidance. Marina told herself she should remain composed. especially with so many guests on board. This journey, after all, wasn't just about getting from point A to point B. It was the start of a mission to bring educational and entrepreneurial resources to underprivileged communities. She couldn't let the disruptive behavior of one staff member overshadow that purpose. Eventually, thirst prodded her from her seat. She glanced around to see if any crew members were free, perhaps Gisele, who had been kind enough to bring her water earlier. But the aisles were empty, the other attendants likely distributing blankets or checking on dozing passengers. Not wanting to rouse anyone from rest, Marina decided to quietly help herself. She stood, smoothing out the slight wrinkles in her tailored blazer and heading down the aisle to the galley. The dim lighting lent a dreamlike quality to the corridor. It was a stark contrast to the bright bustle that had marked takeoff a few hours prior. Marina could hear the distant hum of the engines, a comforting white noise that had lulled most on board to sleep. Sliding aside the light curtain to the galley, she found the small fridge stocked with water and juice. She reached for a bottle of sparkling water, but paused when she heard footsteps behind her. Turning around, she found Camilla emerging from a staff area, her features shadowed by the overhead lighting. The tension in Camilla's body was immediately evident, her shoulders tight, her expression hardening into a glare. "You're not supposed to be in here," Camilla snapped, her voice slicing through the stillness of the cabin. Marina blinked, momentarily startled by the vehemence in Camilla's tone. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't want to bother anyone for a glass of water." Camilla stepped closer, her posture rigid. "You can't just waltz in like you own the place," she continued, louder than necessary given the sleeping passengers. "Don't you know basic flight protocol?" Confused and a bit taken aback, Marina tried to remain poised. She gently closed the fridge, bottle in hand. "I do own this plane," she reminded Camilla, keeping her voice measured. "But I truly wasn't trying to overstep. I just saw everyone was busy." A mirthless laugh escaped Camilla. "Sure. Next time, just stay in your seat, like everyone else. We have a service schedule for a reason." Marina felt an unexpected wave of both embarrassment and frustration. She had no wish to make a scene or wake her companions, but the attendant's condescending attitude was pushing her patience. "Camilla," she said in a hushed tone, "can we step aside and talk about this? I sense there's a misunderstanding between us." Camilla folded her arms, eyes narrowed. "Misunderstanding? There's no misunderstanding. You people always show up expecting special treatment, acting like you run the world. Money doesn't change that." In that charged moment, Marina felt her pulse quicken. She recognized the phrase, "you people," for the slur it was. She recalled her mother's voice, urging her always to stand up for herself. "What do you mean by you people?" Marina asked, each word carefully enunciated. Camilla's lips twitched in something like a sneer. "You know exactly what I mean. I don't care if you're rich or famous, you're still the same underneath." Before Marina could respond, the curtain behind them rustled. Giselle, along with two philanthropic passengers, peeked into the galley. Concern flashed across Giselle's face as she heard the raised voices. She gestured for Camilla to lower her tone, but Camilla brushed her off, doubling down on her anger. "Stay out of this," Camilla snapped at Giselle, her voice cracking with the strain of barely contained fury. Giselle stepped forward, speaking softly to avoid disturbing others. "Camilla, calm down. We can talk this out." But Camilla was like a coiled spring, her resentment surging forward without warning. Marina, bracing herself, realized there was little point in attempting a peaceful dialogue when Camilla's mind was set on conflict. She noted the other passengers, their eyes wide with worry, and felt a new weight on her shoulders. Not only did she have to stand firm, but she also had to keep the rest of her guests from becoming collateral damage in this confrontation. She inhaled, steadying her voice. "We can resolve this professionally, Camilla," she said, taking a slight step back to de-escalate the physical tension. "But this hostility has to stop." Camilla's gaze darted between Marina and the onlookers, her face flushed with equal parts rage and embarrassment. For a chilling second, no one spoke, each person aware that one wrong word could send the moment spiraling out of control. In the silence, the drone of the engine seemed louder, a reminder that they were suspended miles above the earth with nowhere to hide from each other. Then, as if collecting all her anger, Camilla turned sharply on her heel and stalked past Giselle and the passengers, disappearing down the narrow corridor. The only evidence of her presence was the lingering tension in the air and the rapid beats of Marina's heart. Giselle and the others immediately converged around Marina, asking if she was all right. Marina nodded, though her thoughts swirled. Despite her best efforts, she couldn't dismiss the acidic phrase echoing in her head, "You." She knew precisely what it implied, and the sting of that insinuation cut deeply, especially on a flight meant to champion inclusivity and community-driven progress. All she could do was take a steadying breath and remind herself of her mother's words, "Confront prejudice with dignity, but never doubt your right to stand tall." With her water bottle still clenched in her hand, Marina returned to her seat, a tempest of emotions roiling inside her. She had faced many challenges in her journey, from a humble background to global CEO, but this was a personal affront that carried echoes of a long, painful history. She found herself silently praying that the tension would ease before something more drastic happened. Yet an uneasy feeling told her the storm was far from over. The aircraft touched down on the tarmac of Cape Town International Airport under a breathtaking sunrise. Table Mountain loomed in the distance, bathed in the morning glow. Ordinarily, such a sight would fill Marina with awe and excitement for the work ahead. Now it felt overshadowed by the memory of last night's turmoil. Once the plane taxied to a private hangar, the pilot opened the door. Marina's personal security detail, who were waiting in Cape Town, came aboard. Robert briefed them on what had happened. At first, they looked incredulous. Then, seeing the seriousness of everyone's faces, they sprang into action. They escorted Marina off the plane, then circled back to instruct Camilla to remain on board until local authorities could be contacted. Camilla emerged cautiously from the staff quarters, wearing a mask of defiance over a face etched with anxiety. Her hands trembled at her sides. She knew she'd crossed a line that could end her career, possibly land her in legal trouble, yet pride held her tongue. As she stepped off the plane, security personnel guided her into a small waiting area in the hangar, away from the philanthropic group. Authorities arrived, airport security and local police, to gather statements. Marina, despite her exhaustion, reiterated that yes, she wanted to press charges. She felt it was her responsibility, not just for herself, but to show that such violence has consequences, no matter who you are. Camilla would be taken into custody for assault, pending further investigation. Marina had provided the plane's security footage as evidence. The cameras in the galley had captured the incident, leaving little room for dispute. As Camilla was led away, her eyes darted nervously around the hangar. She was looking for someone, perhaps a sympathetic face, but found none. That was the first moment real fear seemed to break through her facade. She mumbled something incoherent, and for a split second, Marina thought she saw tears in the young woman's eyes. But the die was cast. Camilla was in custody now, facing the hard karma of her actions. News travels fast in an age of social media. Within hours, local reporters had caught wind of an incident involving a flight attendant allegedly assaulting a high-profile passenger. They scoured the arrivals at Cape Town International, connecting the dots and realizing that the passenger was none other than Marina Caldwell, the billionaire philanthropist behind Caldwell Tech Solutions. Soon, headlines blared, flight attendant arrested for slapping billionaire tech CEO on her own private jet. The story ignited a firestorm of reactions online. Many were outraged at the blatant disrespect and possible racial undertones of the altercation. Others speculated about Camilla's motives or personal issues. Caldwell Tech Solutions' PR team swung into damage control mode, releasing a brief statement confirming the assault but focusing on Marina's well-being and reaffirming her philanthropic commitments. They pointedly avoided sensationalism, sticking to the facts. Marina tried to shield the philanthropic mission from the gossip. She continued with her scheduled meetings in Cape Town, determined not to let the incident overshadow her reasons for being there. She delivered a keynote address at a local university about the power of technology to transform communities. She visited a township outside the city to see how digital literacy programs were making a difference. All the while, she kept her phone on silent to avoid the constant ping of media inquiries. The public outpouring of support was immense. People posted messages of solidarity, praising Marina for her grace under pressure. Yet, as she scrolled through some of the more vile comments online, she saw how quickly the conversation could devolve into racial stereotypes and personal attacks, either against Camilla or, astonishingly, against Marina herself. It was a sobering reminder that prejudice lurked in many corners of society, not just on that plane. By the second day, the local authorities asked Marina to come to the police station to provide a more detailed statement. After she finished answering their questions, one of the officers quietly mentioned that Camilla was in a holding cell awaiting a bail hearing the next day. He asked if Marina wanted to see her, clarifying that she wasn't required to. Marina hesitated. Was she truly ready to confront the person who had struck her? Part of her was still shaken, angry and hurt, yet she also remembered Dr. Naomi Reyes's words about compassion. Perhaps, in facing Camilla, she could find a sense of closure, or at least understanding. She agreed. The officer led her down a corridor with pale walls and fluorescent lights, the antiseptic smell of institutional cleaner filling the air. Eventually, they arrived at a small visitation room separated by plexiglass. Camilla, wearing a rumpled grey jumpsuit, sat on the other side. Her eyes widened at the sight of Marina. She looked exhausted, her hair disheveled, her cheeks streaked with dried tears. Marina picked up the phone receiver to speak through the glass. Camilla did the same, although her hand shook noticeably. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Marina began softly, "Why?" Camilla's lips parted, but no words came at first. Finally she swallowed. I don't know," she said, her voice hoarse. "I was angry, frustrated. I guess I felt like you were flaunting your wealth and I took it personally, okay? It's no excuse. I'm sorry." Marina's heart pounded. She studied Camilla's face, noting the remorse that appeared genuine. "I never wanted to flaunt anything. You made assumptions about me. Was it because of my skin color? Because I'm a woman in power? What made you hate me so much so quickly?" Camilla's eyes welled. She dropped her gaze, fiddling with the receiver cord. "I come from a small town. I've had experiences. My father lost his job to outsourcing. He blamed big companies, foreign interests. He said a lot of ugly things. I grew up hearing them. I know that's not an excuse. I'm just trying to explain. Then you came on board, ordering people around." She paused, when Marina's eyebrows arched. "Okay, maybe that was just my perception. I misread you. I saw you as part of the system that made my dad's life miserable." Marina's throat felt tight. "You realize how misguided that is, don't you? Caldwell Tech Solutions is committed to creating jobs and supporting communities globally. I'm sorry your family had struggles, but that doesn't excuse assault." A tear finally fell from Camilla's eye. "I know. I ruined my life in one stupid moment, and I can't take it back." For a few beats, silence stretched between them. Marina felt a swirl of emotions: anger, pity, confusion. Finally, she spoke. "I'm pressing charges, but I'm also willing to see if we can come to some restorative justice approach. I don't know if it's possible in this jurisdiction. I'm not a lawyer. But if there's a way for you to learn from this instead of just rotting in prison, I'd be open to hearing it." Camilla looked stunned. "You're not just throwing the book at me," Marina sighed. "I believe in accountability. But I also believe people can change if they truly understand what they did. That's all I can say right now. I wish you well, Camilla, despite everything." They hung up the phones almost simultaneously, a swirl of unresolved tension still lingering in the air. As Marina walked away, she realized that her philanthropic mission in Cape Town now had a new dimension, shining light on bigotry's dark corners, reminding her that no place and no person is completely immune to prejudice. Camilla's legal battle began almost immediately upon her arrival in Cape Town's central holding facility. With the assault caught on multiple security cameras, there was little room for ambiguity. Flight logs corroborated the exact timeline, and statements from Gisele, Robert, and the philanthropic guests confirmed that Camilla's attack had been not only unprovoked, but shockingly brazen. Her defense attorneys tried to argue stress and prior emotional trauma, but the evidence was clear. She had violated both the law and her professional obligations in a single, explosive moment. However, something unexpected happened when Marina was called upon to provide her full statement. Rather than demanding the harshest possible sentence, she emphasized her commitment to justice that also allowed room for personal growth. Influenced by her mother's teachings and her own philanthropic ethos, Marina expressed a willingness to explore alternatives to the typical punitive approach, provided Camilla showed genuine remorse and a readiness to change. This led the court to grant Camilla a rare opportunity for a restorative justice hearing conducted alongside standard legal proceedings. In these sessions, Camilla was forced to confront her actions on a deeper level. She participated in counseling that delved into her biases and anger issues, and she sat in several mediated conversations where she had to listen to the impact of her behavior on Marina, her fellow crew members, and the philanthropic passengers who had watched the assault unfold. Marina joined these dialogues via secure video link from her office in Cape Town, where she was finalizing negotiations to fund a new tech incubator program for underprivileged youth. While Camilla broke down on multiple occasions, her tears alone were not enough. She had to demonstrate a real willingness to atone. In the end, the judge imposed a blended sentence: a suspended jail term, mandatory community service in her home state, extensive anger management classes, and a restraining order preventing her from contacting Marina directly. This compromise did not spare Camilla from professional fallout. With a criminal record for assault, she lost her job on the spot. Her aviation credentials were effectively revoked, and private charter companies blacklisted her name. In an industry heavily reliant on personal references and impeccable trust, she had shattered her prospects in a single, impulsive act. Reeling from the legal consequences and public scrutiny, Camilla returned to her hometown to live with her father. There, she found herself face to face with the very prejudices and resentments that had shaped her worldview. Part of her community service involved volunteering at a local youth center that served a racially and economically diverse population. Day after day, she tutored children from backgrounds she once dismissed. As she read stories, helped with homework, and listened to the challenges these kids faced, she began to see the humanity she had so recklessly ignored. Meanwhile, Marina was wrapping up her philanthropic goals in Cape Town. The campaign to finance a cutting-edge tech incubator exceeded its targets, promising hundreds of underprivileged youth the training and mentorship to enter the digital economy. Though the assault had been a painful disruption, Marina found a renewed sense of purpose in using it as a vivid example of why her work mattered. She spoke openly at public forums, local universities, fundraising events, and even a brief press conference about how bigotry and violence can erupt in spaces we assume to be safe. Her message was simple yet profound. Accountability and empathy can coexist, and our collective responsibility is to ensure neither is neglected. As Camilla spent her days performing the unglamorous tasks of service cleaning community spaces, sorting donations, reading with kids who looked at her with innocent curiosity, she confronted the gap between who she had been and who she might become. Hard karma had found her in the form of public humiliation, legal penalties, and professional ruin. But in the midst of that downfall, a singular, slender thread of hope remained, a chance to learn from her mistakes, to unlearn her prejudices, and to rebuild her life on a foundation of humility and respect. For both women, the aftermath of that fateful flight became an inflection point. Marina continued blazing forward with her global endeavors, now further convinced that equity and dialogue were needed in every corner of society, while Camilla began the long road of accepting what she had done and attempting, through service and introspection, to become someone worthy of a second chance. Months later, Marina was once again seated in her private Boeing business jet, the cabin buzzing with a renewed sense of camaraderie. After everything that had transpired, public scrutiny, legal proceedings, and countless interviews, her life had finally begun settling into a rhythm of normalcy. In the intervening time, the Cape Town Tech Incubator had launched with spectacular success. Its first cohort of 50 students showcased extraordinary talent, quickly attracting attention from major global investors. Each participant's story reminded Marina of why she tirelessly pursued her philanthropic mission: to uplift those who lacked opportunity, to inspire change in places where it was needed most. The flight crew accompanying her on this transatlantic journey had been carefully vetted. Most of them had flown with her before, back when she was establishing Caldwell Tech Solutions. Among them was Gisele, newly promoted to lead flight attendant, a recognition of her grace under pressure and her empathetic leadership, especially in the wake of the infamous incident with Camilla. Gisele, with her warm smile, approached Marina mid-flight and quietly set down a cup of chamomile tea on the small table beside her seat. "Thank you," Marina said, cradling the cup in her hands. She glanced out the window, the gentle light reflecting off towering cumulus clouds below. Her mind wandered back to the moment she had returned to the US from South Africa, overshadowed by swirling rumors and frantic media attention. Back then, reporters clamored for details, eager to sensationalize an assault on a billionaire by one of her own flight attendants. But Marina had chosen a more measured approach, telling the truth about the assault without fueling outrage or demands for vengeance. Gisele settled into the seat across from her, mindful not to invade Marina's space. "It's good to see the tension behind your eyes easing," she observed gently. "How are you feeling, really?" Marina considered the question. She couldn't deny that the memory of Camilla's slap still hovered at the edges of her thoughts, especially on nights when her mind refused to quiet. She had become more cautious, more aware that even in places she once deemed safe, her own plane, among her own hand-picked crew, prejudice and violence could erupt without warning. At the same time, she refused to let fear define her. "I'm grateful, tired but hopeful," she replied, stirring her tea slowly. "I still think about Camilla, about all the things that led her down that path. I actually received a letter from her through the attorney apologizing again. She said she's doing community service near her hometown and going through counseling. She sounded sincere. I want to believe she meant it. A soft smile touched Giselle's lips. You did what you felt was right. You pressed charges, but you also left the door open for her to learn something. That's rare. Most people would have wanted a harsher punishment just to make a statement. Marina nodded. I believe in accountability, but I also believe people can change. In the end, maybe that's the statement worth making, that no one is beyond redemption if they're truly willing to face what they did. And I still believe, she added, her voice quiet but resolute, that we rise by lifting others, even those who have done us harm, if they show genuine remorse. She paused for a moment, gazing out at the endless horizon. The plane glided effortlessly through the sky, symbolic of how far she had come from a college student coding websites in a cramped dorm room to an international philanthropist. As she looked ahead, she reminded herself that the most profound journeys often begin with adversity, requiring both courage and compassion at every step. Giselle leaned forward, resting her forearms on her knees. What's next for you? Marina inhaled, letting the subtle scent of chamomile fortify her spirit. I'll keep expanding the incubator program, maybe replicate it in other parts of Africa. I have a team scouting locations in Ghana and Kenya. And, of course, she added with a small grin, I'll keep boarding this plane, hoping every time that it's a vessel for connection rather than conflict. Their shared laughter was light, but it carried the weight of everything they had endured. The moment felt like a sunrise after a long night's storm, bright, clear, and full of promise. With that renewed sense of purpose, Marina sipped her tea, grateful for second chances and eager to continue her life's mission, bridging divides, fighting for equality, and believing, against all odds, in the power of humanity's better angels. Thank you for joining us on this emotional roller coaster of power, prejudice, and ultimately, redemption. If there's one thing Marina Caldwell's story has taught us, it's that grace under fire can reshape even the darkest moments into catalysts for positive change. From the tense showdown in the galley to the legal reckoning and final efforts at restorative justice, we've witnessed how one impulsive act can affect countless lives and how resilience and compassion can guide us through turmoil. If you found this story compelling, please consider showing your support. Like this video if it moved you. Share it with friends and family who might need a reminder that empathy and accountability can coexist. And subscribe for more stories that spotlight humanity's capacity for transformation. Together, let's keep learning, keep caring, and keep believing in the better angels of our nature. Your engagement means the world to us.